Welcome to the 4-Leaf for Life Reiki podcast. I'm here today with Lourdes LeBron from Rest Relaxation Reiki on YouTube, and we are going to talk about the power symbol in Reiki. Welcome, Lourdes.
Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate you inviting me in.
It's so wonderful. Lourdes and I have been collaborating on several different projects, and I'm really enjoying this wisdom that we get when we work together.
I am too, because you provide a different insight than what I've learned or what I've experienced. So when we share it, what I find is that there is this chemistry that happens not only for our knowledge, our day-to-day knowledge, but also our spiritual knowledge and the knowledge that we gain from Reiki.
And also the people who are listening are giving wonderful feedback that it's deepening their experience and their understanding as well, which I find really fascinating.
I agree. For me, the feedback from people who watch the videos or who experience the Reiki from us is what helps us not only go forward, but actually improve the way we do energy and actually the energy itself.
I find that with Reiki, as in any spiritual modality or healing modality, as most would understand it, that really it's about being in relationship with the energy. One of the aspects of that being in relationship and wisdom, knowledge, trust unfolding over time has to do with the different components of Reiki. And so we wanted to talk about the symbols in Reiki, which are introduced usually in the second degree and then the third degree as well, which you would know as Reiki Master. The power symbol is the very first symbol that we learn when we are being attuned to Reiki. It is it's powerful. The name kind of says it all. I find it really fascinating that even within the symbol that I've read and I've seen, that even the symbols themselves can be slightly different depending on the lineage. Of course, we all go back to Usui Sensei, but if you think about the fact that there are millions of people in the world who have been attuned and who work with Reiki, it's really amazing that it hasn't changed more than it has. It's naturally evolved. So we thought it would be really fun to talk about the power symbol and the way that we use it as Reiki masters, Reiki practitioners ourselves, because Lourdes and I both, we actively use Reiki on ourselves and on others, clients as well. So that gives you a really different, deeper experience when you're using these tools on yourself and other people and how they experience them, how it creates a different energetic effect. So Lourdes, I would love to hear your experience with the power symbol.
Well, what I find the power symbol is, it's a booster. All symbols help you actually focus on the intention. But what I find happens is when I do use the power symbol, it helps me actually become more aware of the energy and how it's working on the person or where it's going, or actually tuning in to any messages that may come in. For me, it definitely is an amplifier.
I love that. When I was first initiated into Reiki, it was described as all the healing energy of the universe come here. And so it is really this amplification, as you noted. And it's really just requesting that special quality of energy that we know of as Reiki, and we also know it as Reiki the modality, to really be harnessed and balanced and focused into a certain area. And that is how I use it as well.
I agree. A lot of times I will start off without the symbols, but when I start tuning in, when I'm getting into that flow of energy, that's when that symbol comes in, and then I pick up information that the energy wants to relay to me. It's not that it's all about me. It's what the energy wants to do and where it wants to go and how it wants to flow.
Oh, I love the way you explained that, because to me, that's exactly what Reiki is. It's divinely guided or guided by the greater spirit or the greater power, however you describe that infinite one, ineffable energy. And that's the beauty of Reiki, of not actually having to know or to feel the responsibility of have to do something, of just allowing that energy to guide us. And I think that perhaps anyone that's listening to this podcast might wonder, well, how do you know, Lourdes? Like, does the symbol speak to you? Do you see a vision of the symbol? Or how do you in particular become aware that the power symbol will be beneficial?
Well, I think it really is a matter of working with them. For me, it's when I know, for example, if there's a blockage in someone, besides using some other symbols, the power symbol always adds to the, I would say, not just the strength, but the intention. And it is a matter of practice. The more you practice with the symbols, the easier it is to receive the information, the information from the energy or from the person's body or the intention of what needs to be used. But as I tell my students all the time, it's practice. You always need to practice. It's like any skill. The more you use the symbols, the easier it is to know when to use them and to interpret the information we're getting as to when to use them.
That's a great, really helpful answer, I think, for many people. You know, in some of the traditions of Reiki, they tell us how the power symbol might have been used directly in the Sui branch. For example, I took a Jikiden Reiki course. I did Shoden and Okuden, and they talked about this biosen, this way that we energetically can feel through the sensations in our hands, hibiki it's called in Japanese, the different congested areas that really indicate that there is an area that the energy is not flowing and that it does need more particular intent and focus for the energy. And I think that I was never taught that when I took Reiki, but because I really just have a thirst for knowledge and want to know more and want to experience more, I was always really curious about the sensations in my hands and what they meant. So when I did the research, I did find this information talking about those 5 levels of sensations in the hands. And it also talked about using the power symbol in particular when you are in tune with that wave of energy, because it almost comes in cycles. It's described as cycles. And when our hands are sensitized and when we're more sensitive to the subtle energy by practicing, as you have mentioned, Lourdes, we can become aware of these particular waves, these sensations, indicating that there is need for more of that focus to break that up, so to speak, and to help the blood, the energy circulate more. For me, I was never aware of that. But I know in reading some books, for example, Nicholas Pearson has a book that I love called The Foundations of Reiki Ryoho. He mentions that many people that he has spoken to just naturally do that. And I think when I'm listening to the way that you use it, I feel that that is part of what you are experiencing and doing naturally by actually being familiar, in tune, trusting, allowing that energy to work with you. Is that something that resonates with you?
Yes, I've always been intuitive and I've always been more aware, if you would like to put it that way. So when I work on a person, whether it's in person or through distance energy, usually when I was starting Reiki, I would scan the body just to make sure, just to confirm or validate what I was feeling. And I think that was really important. Many people don't realize that when you're starting, and if you have what I call an intuitive hit, see if you can validate it in some way. So if I get it, let's say psychically, let's say through my third eye, I may perceive it through a third eye, but when I put my hand over that area in their body, then I was like, okay, there's a difference here. This is why I was called to go to this area. So it is something intuitive, but I think, as I mentioned before, it's the practice and that scanning. that is suggested for many people that you were talking about, scanning the body. You become aware and you start getting familiar with the energy of that body. And that helps you in so many ways, because then you could use the correct symbol if you're using symbols, or you know where to focus the energy, or you, like I mentioned before, seeing or sensing where it needs more help. The symbol really is wonderful for doing that. And like all Reiki symbols, they just help you to pinpoint the area and use that symbol as a tool to aid with clearing the energy if it needs it, or amplifying the energy if it needs it. That sometimes there are areas that need energy, more energy than usual. There could have been trauma and it's healing, but if you wanted to heal a little faster, you might use that power symbol to aid you as well.
I wonder if you might also elaborate on some of the other ways that you might use the symbol, because in the Western tradition, we're very innovative. We try different things, and we might be using the symbol in different ways than the traditional Japanese roots might have been used. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being in relationship with this energy, and that we're meant to grow and to expand. I would love to invite you to speak to how else you use it, and that we might use it in the Western tradition that might be a little different than the Japanese tradition.
It's so funny that you mention that, because that's what I always do. I'm always trying to figure out new ways to use the energy. So, for example, let's say I'm having chamomile tea and I want to amplify the calming effect. I may hold that cup of tea in my hands and place the power symbol in it to amplify the calming properties of the chamomile tea. If I have crystals, I will use the symbols to amplify the property, the metaphysical property of that crystal. So, for example, black tourmaline, I may use it around the house, and I will put the power symbol in to strengthen the properties of protectiveness of that crystal. In my car, definitely use it in my car. I've used it when car hasn't been starting and you need the car to start, so I use it in that. I've been using it on computers. We're having challenges today coming on, so energy was starting to flow for that. There's so many ways that we can use it, and we're only limited by our own minds.
I love that you use it with computers and with machineries, because I know that in my notes that it mentions that you can do that, but I've never actually done that. So I love that you've done it with positive results.
I feel I need to. I have challenges with electronics, so I'm always using that. I use it on my plants in my garden. I'm trying to strengthen them, increase their immune system, because right now it's summer. We've had a lot of rain, so there's a lot of mold, mildew, blight, things like that on the plants. So I've been working with that. So the power symbol comes in. You can use it for anything. It's just, like I said, how limited your imagination is. And I find the more people you speak to or you listen to, like this podcast, the more you're aware, you're reading the books. Those are all different ways that actually strike that light bulb. It lights up and you have an idea and you're like, why don't I try Reiki for this? And that's what does. It's communication. It's the sharing of ideas that really helps you move forward with the Reiki and think of more things and become more creative.
I agree. It's the expansion of what other people might intuitively just think of simply that I might never actually get to in my own experience. And so expanding the possibilities for each and every one of us. I love the power symbol myself for helping to ground. For example, putting it on the soles of my feet, drawing it on the soles of my feet. I find that feels really grounding and nourishing. Many people use the power symbol in their field because when you're drawing in more light, it has the effect of almost dissolving anything that is negative or dense. So it has almost a very protective effect. Putting it on all of my chakras when I do treatments or attunements, I find There are so many different ways that we can use it. And I love the Reiki energy because it seems so simple, and it is. But the genius and the mastery of it is really sitting in that energy with the symbols or however else, and really just allowing them to speak to you. You know, this is the way the universe speaks to us, through symbols and symbology. And a symbol can have so much more meaning and so much more depth than, you know, phrase or whatever. And it's really when we work with the symbols, when we create that relationship with the symbols, that we're able to receive that information on becoming more expansive with them.
I agree. It is that relationship with the symbols. For me, it's a matter of working. It becomes you're in harmony with the symbol. That's the best way of me putting it. You and the symbol become one. And I'm saying you as an instrument or a channel for that energy. Then it's easier for you to channel because you have a better relationship. You're in harmony. And that makes a big difference because when you're first new and you're using the symbols, they may feel uncomfortable. You don't know when to use them. But as you continue to work with yourself and with others in other situations, it becomes so much easier that now they're fully integrated into your being. You don't have to, you can draw them, you can say them. Sometimes you don't even have to draw or say them. If you're asking that the energy do what it needs to, if you already set the intention, but that comes after years of practice, that it just flows automatically. They become you. That's the best way of putting it.
I absolutely agree. I always kind of refer to them as they're almost like training wheels, and they're really helping us to attune to a certain frequency with a real specialization within that whole divine energy that I feel to be what Reiki is. And so it's very potent in that it's very specialized and focused for certain things. And of course, the power symbol is gathering all of that light, that beautiful wisdom, and focusing it on a certain area or illuminating a certain aspect that we would like to know more about. I find it really fascinating in my own practice that I often don't use any of the symbols. Like, for example, in my videos, I don't actually draw the distance symbol. I'm just intending. It does take years, I think, of working and practicing to be able to trust in that. Because the symbol of actually drawing it and using it is almost like a ritual in itself to help create that trust and that faith that it will work. I love that you mentioned that you might feel a little awkward. I remember feeling completely awkward with the symbols. Like, does this really work? This seems a little, is this really work? And I remember the first distance treatments that I did when of course, we're not talking about distance today, but just as an example, and really thinking like that this is completely off the mark, blah, 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 whatever. And then receiving the feedback from the recipient of, wow, that really resonates. That was amazing. And so that was all very validating and again, helping us to have the trust.
I agree. And it's so funny, like you said, when you're first starting out, such a challenge because we're not used to drawing those symbols. Many people are like, I can't draw the symbols. You can't draw the symbol. Place the symbol on the person, on the area. You may not have to draw it. For some people, just saying it is enough. It's a matter of finding what works for you. And as we keep saying that, we've been doing this for years. So now we can just think it. In my videos, I will think the symbol. If I'm using a symbol, I definitely think it. And I know that it's going to go to the person. When I'm working at home on a distance person, I may actually draw it because sometimes drawing also may help with amplifying that intention. Sometimes just using your hands in that way. It's always different for everyone, for every person, every situation. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But when I do use them, it really does make it feel there's a higher vibration as compared to when I didn't do it.
And I was reviewing back through my notes, I haven't read my notes for a while. I was thinking, I do use them, but I'm thinking I'd like to start using them more again and really just experiment and continue with that relationship with them to see what else opens up for me. I have no idea, but I trust that there is so much more than I have gleaned in my own experience. Pardon the meows. That's my little kitten, Piper.
That's wonderful. I didn't hear the meow, but I think there is an inherent, not a need, but a calling to use symbols. I think there's something very innate in us that recognizes that symbols have meaning. And the more we're aware of that, the more we're aware of symbology, as you mentioned, all throughout the world, all throughout our lives, and how things develop those meanings. And for me, the Reiki symbols are very special. There is something unique about them, and it's because of the history with them and all the previous Reiki practitioners that have used those symbols. So after time, they have developed this increased ability, not just because it's Reiki, not just because it already had the intention, but just because so many Reiki practitioners have used them and that energy frequency has increased so much.
Oh, wow. You're making me even more excited to use them more. I'm like, yes, that is so awesome. I just love the way you explained that. I'm excited now to go even deeper with the symbols based on this conversation. So I think we will wrap this up, and we're hoping that you, the listener, will be just as excited and interested in continuing to explore and develop with the Reiki symbols, in particular the power symbol we're talking about today. We would love to hear your experience of the symbols and even what resonated in this little chat. Thank you so much, Lourdes. I could talk to you all day, every day. Is there anything that you would like to end with?
All I would tell people is don't be afraid to use them. Use them, get to know them, think of them as a pair of gloves that you put on that eventually become part of your own skin. And then you don't even have to worry about it. That energy has been integrated into you.
Perfect way to complete this podcast. Again, I would love to thank you, Lourdes, for joining me. You can find Lourdes on YouTube under Rest Relaxation Reiki. If you haven't seen her channel yet, I encourage you to go explore. And of course, you can find me at 4Leaf for Life Reiki. This is Dawn Williams wishing you all a fantastic, empowered day. Take care.